Stanley Matthews, The Way It Was, an autobiography on a great soccer player, a book that my grandfather gave me. The first chapter is entitled If It Wasn't for My Mother. In the early 50s, we were all on top money at Blackpool. If we won, we got a full whack, which in an era of maximum wage, that was £12, including our win bonus. We collected our wages from the club office on a Friday lunchtime. The money was for the previous week's game, and we were paid in cash. It came in a small brown envelope, and each player had to sign a chitty to say that he had received his money. We were paid in notes for the smaller denomination, I'm sure, which was a psychological ploy on part of the club to make it look like a lot. Imagine the top players of today picking up their wages in cash. It would be like a humping wad of size of a bale of hay out of the club office every week. On this particular occasion, we won our home at the previous week, so I went along to collect the full amount, £12. I signed for this princely sum, and once outside the club in the car park, a bit of a misnomer, strictly speaking. It was the director's car park, because hardly any of the Blackpool players had cars. I counted my wages and was astonished to find the envelope had contained £13. We'd been playing well in front of full houses at Bloomfield Road, and I had been doing okay, so I never questioned it. I simply took out the extra £1 and slipped it into my wallet before taking my wages home. We won at Chelsea the next day and the following Friday. I went to pick up my wages as usual. The time when I came to count it, I discovered there was only 11 in the envelope. I immediately made a beeline for manager Joe Smith's office to point out the mistake. Joe was a wily old bird, a great manager and a clever psychologist where the players were concerned. He had the respect of the players, and we hung on his every word, so much so that if it had ever turned around and he told me to go to hell, I would have actually looked forward to the journey. "You never came in complaining to me last week when we paid you £1 too much," he said, Joe. He'd caught me on the hop because I didn't think he knew about the previous week's overpayment. There was an awkward silence for about a moment as I gathered my thoughts. "Well, everyone is allowed to make a mistake, boss," I said. But when it happened for the second week running, I thought, I'd better bring it to your attention. Football is still, to Paley's phrase, the beautiful game. It has undergone myriad of changes since I played my last league game in 1965 at the age of 50 years old. I say league game because I actually played my last competitive match in Brazil in 1985 at the age of 70, and I damaged my cartilage, but a promising career cut tragically short. Football can be a cruel mistress. Many of the changes I have witnessed have become for the good of and have benefited the game. Some have not. It is right that football should reflect the changing society. I have always seen football as a celebration of life. Without change, life would be sterile, unchallenging, without spirit, drama, and color. Such qualities are the very essence of football. That they are which make football. Hugh McAlvany once described it, life's greatest irrelevancy. For over 80 years, football has been an intrinsic part of my life. I have loved it dearly. If longevity of career and awards are anything to go by, which I am not so sure they are, it has been certainly good to me. Football has thrown up many a challenge for me, but in the sitting down to write my autobiography, I feel I am embarking on one of the most difficult challenges of my life. Difficult? Well, yes. I wonder if you've ever tried to tell anybody who you are and what you have been. Ever since I first joined Stoke City over 70 years ago, much has been written about me. There have also been books that have carried my name, though in truth they were written by others with my consent. This is the first time that I have attempted to write a story of my life, and I have to say I do it with some embarrassment. That I do is all mainly down to some warm and friendly people have persuaded me that after 70 plus years of involvement in football, I might have a story to tell that might be of interest to you. It's true, I have seen great players and great days, yet if I hadn't been for my mother, I may have well been downtrodden down a different sporting path. I was born in Hanley, Stoke-on-Trent, in the heart of the Potteries on February 1915, one of 4 brothers. My father was Jack Mathhews, who, in addition to owning a smart barber shop, had made something of a name for himself as a boxer. Even as a small boy, I was blessed with the ability to run fast. A fact that did not go unnoticed as far as my father was concerned. When I was 6 years old, my father informed me he was going to take me out for some exercise. We walked from Hanley to the Victoria Ground, home of Stoke City Football Club, a distance of about 2 miles. This was in the summer of 1921, and at that time I had no idea why we had gone there. When the wind was in the right direction, I could hear the roar from the Victoria Ground from our backyard, but this was the first time I had ever been to the stadium, one of the oldest clubs in English football. Once inside, I was agog. To a 6-year-old, the Victoria Ground looked like a gigantic with its vast open spaces of terracing, now eerily mute. By the side of the pitch, there was a knot of spectators and lots of boys of various ages who were busy changing into running gear. My father told me to strip to my vest and underpants. And that done, I proceeded to dress me in black running pumps and a pair of shorts that had enough spare material to rig an East Indian bound clipper. And then he told me what he wanted me to do. Excuse me. A running track had been laid out around the pitch, and he guided me to a spot some way ahead of the other boys, who were now taking up positions in their respective lanes. He said, "Now, Stanley, when you hear the man fire his gun, run like hell and don't stop running till you pass a man with the white flag." I stood there in my vest, the navy blue shorts my dad had given me, hanging about my knees, and I watched as Dad went into a huddle with a group of other men. My father produced a book and was writing things down as each man turned to spoke to him and handed him something. I didn't have a clue what was going on, but I kept glancing back towards the other boys. The bigger ones were standing in the starting line next to the man with the gun. When I heard the gunfire, I just took off, as Dad had said, my little legs pounding 10 to the dozen. No one overtook me. I eventually passed the man with the white flag, but was so unsure of what I was doing, I just kept on going. I remember the men on the sideline laughing as I passed them, and my father running after me, shouting, "Stanley, Stanley, you can stop now!" I didn't know until much later that I had taken part in an open race for boys under 14. With a staggered start according to age, my father had run a book on me, winning, and after the race, I remember him being as pleased as a punch, ruffling my hair and saying, "That's my boy, well done, Stanley." His pocket was bulging with copper and silver coins, and on the way home we stopped off and he bought me a goldfish. He said, "Now, Stanley, if your mother asks, just say I let you run off some steam and I bought you a goldfish as a present." At 13, I only had one thing on my mind, to be a footballer. I had one more year at school before I had to go out and make a living. My father wanted me to be a boxer. Every morning at the crack of dawn, he would get me up to supervise a vigorous workout. One morning, after an hour of intensive physical training, I broke down. I ran into the kitchen and vomited. Great beads of sweat formed on my brow, and eventually I collapsed on the kitchen floor. My mother put me to bed. I could hear her downstairs in the kitchen as usual, with a husband and with 4 hungry lads to feed. My mother seemed to spend most of her life in the kitchen. These were the days when the only thing that could stir, mix, blend, and whisk was a spoon, and the only thing that came ready to serve were tennis balls. Eventually, my father came in and asked where I was. In those days, women rarely took issue with their husbands. She had never said a word about the training. For the first time in my life, I heard my mother get on to my father. "Ever since Stanley said he wanted to be a boxer, didn't want to be a boxer, there's been trouble between you two," she said. It shocked me. It was like hearing Mother Teresa fly off the handle. "Now it's gone too far, it's got to stop, and I'm going to stop it." I didn't hear my father say anything. I guess like me, he was shocked to hear my mother being so assertive. Love women, love women, love women. Haven't you got a sense to see how he wants to do one thing and you want him to do another? Stanley wants to be a footballer, and you can't take it from me now that he's going on with my support and encouragement. If you have anything about it, you Jack Mathhews, you'll get up those stairs and tell your son that you love him. Tell him that you've changed your mind and you're going to do everything in your power as his father to help him realize his dream. Do that, Jack Mathhews, and for we all have know it, you'll make him the happiest lad in Hanley, and be proud to be your son. Again, there was silence. What would have happened if your father wanted you to be a footballer instead of a boxer? I heard my mother ask. I heard my father's voice. I wouldn't have let him. Simple as that. I know you wouldn't, my mother said. You've always had a mind of your own. You were always crazy about boxing, but with Stanley, it's football. Go see him. The stairs creaked like the timbers in an old sailing ship. My father made his way slowly up to the bedroom. I was lying with my back to him as he entered the room, but he reached out and turned towards me. "Listen, son," he said. "I've been giving the football ideas of yours some thought. If you can make yourself good enough to be a schoolboy international before you leave school, go for it. Are you on?" I immediately sat bolt upright. "It's a bet," I said, partly because I knew he was the betting man and partly because I didn't know what else to say. But the next morning he came in my bedroom at the crack of dawn with a football in his hand, and it was back in training. I attended Wellington Road School in Hanley. I never distinguished myself as a scholar, but in many respects I suppose I was a model pupil. I listened in lessons and was fair and middling academically, enjoyed my school life, and never was the source of any trouble. All the spare time I had was taken up playing football. When the school bell rang, I made my way home with a stone ball or a paper at my feet. Once home, I made a piece of waste ground opposite our house where boys from the neighborhood gathered for a kickabout. Coats would be piled for posts, and the game of football would get underway. In fine weather, it would take as many as 20 aside. In bad weather, it hardened a dozen or so, made 6 aside. I firmly believe that in addition to helping my dribbling skills, these games helped all the lads become better citizens in life. All such a kickabout football games do. My reasoning behind this is quite simple. We had no referee or linesman. Yet sometimes up to 40 boys would play football for 2 hours, adhering to the rules as we knew them. When there was a foul, there would be a free kick. When there was a goal scored, the ball would be returned to the center of the waste ground for the game to restart. We didn't need a referee. We accepted the rules of the game and stuck by them. For us not to have done so would have spoiled the game for everyone. It taught us that you can't go around doing what you want because there are others to think of, and if you don't stick to the rules, you spoil it for everyone else. Of course, this was not the conscious thought at the time, but looking back to those kickabout games on the waste ground, it did prepare us for life. Today, you rarely see boys playing kickabout football, and perhaps that's one of the contributing factors to crime we see today. Some youngsters haven't learned the principle that the game and society have rules, and it's far better if you stick by them. Young people today, for all the awareness and sophistication and modern technical innovations, are still basically the same youngsters in my day, no better, no worse. And I'm convinced that some people would benefit from taking part in this sport, a sociable kickabout with mates in the park. I've seen value of youngsters playing football in just about every country in the world. That's why, since my retirement as a player, I have traveled the globe, preaching the gospel of football. Even in the poorest countries, young boys and girls have benefited from playing football. It has given them focus and purpose, a discipline in many respects, and an escape. Anyone who's kicked the ball on the waste ground in the back lane or park will, as I am sure, look fondly upon such games. The boy who owned the ball was the most popular in our neighborhood. The ball he owned was an old leather case ball, with a shine and sheen long since gone. The leather was so lacerated that every time you headed for it, you were in danger of receiving 20 lashes. It was as if we were playing football on the bounty. On wet days, the ball was so sodden with rain it must have tripled in weight. You don't have to know how much about physics to realize that when a ball comes down from a height and makes contact with your head, there's going to be one hell of an impact. It nigh on ripped the hair from your forehead. To this day, whenever I see a bald-headed man, I think to myself, now there's a chap who has been known stress, I always think. There's a bloke who was never afraid to headbutt a ball. When I wasn't playing football on the waste ground with my pals, I'd play by myself at home, and I had a small rubber ball that I spent hours kicking. And that's all that I'm going to actually read for today. I'm going to do some cleaning, and I will get back to the great book that I was given by my grandfather.